Good morning and welcome to A Stirring in My Soul, a virtual masterclass with Patrick Dailey. My name is Jaie Tiefenbrunn and I'm the Director of Music Ministries at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to this workshop sponsored by the National Museum of African American Music, First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville, and the UU Church of Huntsville. Thank you for being with us and welcome. I want to take a moment and introduce some of the faces that you'll see this morning. We are blessed to be joined by Reid. Brandon, go ahead and say good morning to everyone.
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Reid. I am the Education and Development Manager for the Nashville Museum of African American Music. I'm really proud, and the museum is really proud of this collaboration today. We're always looking for projects and partnerships that will help us in completing our mission to educate the world, preserve the legacy, and celebrate the central role African Americans play in creating the American soundtrack. So this virtual experience of our fine-tuning masterclass program is going to be really great and present so many inspiring vocalists, creatives, and musicians the opportunity to learn from Patrick Dailey and other professionals who have just excelled in the genre and who really have a lot of impactful and wonderful things to say about the topic that we're going to be discussing today. So again, thank you everyone on the call. Thank you for our collaborators. Thank you for everyone who's joined the how look forward to seeing how everything comes together.
Thank you so much. I'd like to also introduce Pam Siegler from Unitarian Universalist Church of Huntsville. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning. I'm the music director at Unitarian Universalist Church of Huntsville, and I'd like to welcome you warmly, all of you, in this important work that we're doing today. I wanted to just mention that if you have questions while we're in this workshop, you feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to them in the order that they appear, and we'll do our very best to answer all of them.
It's been a deep honor to get to know Patrick Dailey, our masterclass clinician.
Thank you.
Can't even list all of his accolades and the work that he has done in this community and around the world. So please open your hearts and join me in this welcome for Mr. Patrick Dailey.
Well, wow, thank you, Jaie, and thank you, everyone. I'm so honored to do this today, to present the sort of communal expression of A Stirring in My Soul. This is about the Negro Spiritual. It's about the Negro Spiritual in its influence and its relevance today as we are moving forward in what Reverend William Barber and many others are calling a third reconstruction. What is the relevance of this music? What is the relevance of these experiences? How do they all tie in? What do they tell us? How do they move us forward? So sort of in that same tradition of the West African custom and notion of Sankofa, looking back to move forward. That's what we're doing today. It's also sort of an opportunity for different people in different communities to gather and learn. I'm going to be learning too. I'm going to be learning from everyone here. I'm going to be learning from you all with your questions. It's just really exciting, and I also don't take it for granted, sort of the divine providential like moment that we're in, where we have lost recently many giants in this fight, also losing, you know, lay people, if you will, the everyday working human being on this planet who was just as valuable as those giants, right? And it was interesting too, the conversations that are being had, you know, around this day, getting ready for it and all. You know, I had a conversation this morning with my mom that was bringing some clarity, and there's different emails, and as I will say a lot, the ancestors don't make no mistakes. And so I'm just really excited to share and to engage. I think what we're getting ready to do now is go into the video the clinic that we actually did with the quartet from First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. This whole thing started off because, and Jaie will talk more about it, but we wanted to just do a clinic on this music, on social justice music, on spirituals and such. And, you know, again, because there are no mistakes, things morph into other things and become other things, right? And so that's where we are. But we still wanted to honor that original commitment in some way. And so we partnered and created a clinic and did it in a very special place. And we'll talk more about that as well. So I think we're going right to the video.
So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to take a nice big old breath. And I want you to think that you're taking a breath as if there's an egg in the back of your throat. So that's the shape that you want to imagine. There's an egg back here, and you're going to be like, and I want you to inhale into that space. So you're going to go, go. Again. The next thing I want you to do, fill your rib cage. When you take in that breath with that nice oval space, I want you to take in the breath and feel that rib cage expand. And even you, so we can do rib cage, or you can, if you feel like you can, like even in the back, because you want to feel all of this open up. Think about angels' wings expanding. Ready? Go. Again. Again. Good. Now, what do you feel? Yes, I like it. You feel wings. What else?
And wings.
So we're feeling an expansion,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now the goal is throughout the phrases to actually keep that feeling open. So when you take in the breath and you engage on that place, this should still stay open. And it should feel like it's actually expanding through. So what happens is, in your lower abdominal core, you're also what I call the inner pool. It's also pulling in to keep your wings consistently expanding. All right? That's what we're going to be doing throughout this entire thing. Great? So let's do it one more time. And I want you to go, how can I do it? Let me think. I'm going to say, okay, so we're going to suck in through a straw, or through our imaginary straws. We're going to suck in. We're going to feel the wings expand. And you're going to say, all the way out, you're gonna do, but feel like for 15 seconds, we're gonna go for that. I don't care, I'm gonna challenge you. For 15 seconds, go, feel like your wings are expanding, feel the inner pool. All right, let's try it. Ready, go. Breathe in, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, some of y'all can still go. Okay. That's exactly what you want to happen. I always give this example. I had a coaching with a teacher at a very noted conservatory in New York. Because I was like, oh, I'm going there for my master's, and everybody said go to her. Well, when I had my trial lesson, I realized that she was actually really crazy. Didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, ma'am, you want me to do what? Like all the things I just told you to do, expanding rib cage, staying erect, and all of these things. She was like, oh, don't worry about expanding your rib cage. Don't worry about, all of that. Your posture's too tall. I was like, you're nuts. But one of the things she said to me that has stayed with me since then is that, when you were born singing. If you go to any infant ward in a hospital, and you see all the babies in the bassinets and all the incubators and everything, they are laid out and they're just on their backs and they are crying and wailing. But what do you notice about their bodies? That rib cage is expanded. That abdominal core is engaged. They can go, and all they have is space. All they have is space to just till kingdom come. And it's like, okay, this is nice. They look cute. That's going home with somebody. And they got to deal with that. Now, but the thing is, when they go home, what happens is your nature was one way, your nurture is another. Be quiet, sit still. Can you hold back? Oh, maybe the baby is tall, so you're trying to, okay, duck to get between spaces. Or, they grow up to be tall, so they ducking, all of that. Oh, maybe they're short, so they want to feel like they're taller, so the posture does. They're doing all sorts of things. They tell you in church and school to sit still, stand in straight lines, and it throws everything off. And so when we come to singing to get back to your nature. And so that your singing default becomes like your nurture. It becomes what you do automatically. So when you take in a breath to sing, at least, that's your automatic posture. Your automatic posture is open, wings, expand, support. Oh, we're good. We're just going. This is what I know. It may not be like that all the time, but we're going to work towards that being our default. So let's do a quick warm up. One more time. Now, the other thing I want to say as we go into this, do not be afraid to vibrate. What do I mean by that? Not be afraid to let the voice naturally want to wiggle, naturally want to, even if it wobbles. That means the muscles are doing something and getting used to it. So, I don't care if it does that. Okay. Do it. Okay? Because that is all going to mean something when we start the actual piece. Good. Yes. I love what you're doing because you're actually putting that whole motion into your body. I wanted to take a moment because she's like, all of that is good. Everything has to, the entire mechanism is working. So if you gotta, because I even have students do it. I'm not gonna make y'all do it. I should, but I'm not. Usually I have everybody in the sumo wrestler stance. And if you need to do that, go ahead. But they are in this stance and that opens everything out. And if that's what you feel like you want to do, then do it. I'm saying it's a suggestion.
We've never done that before.
Oh, sounds like we're in alignment. Now, I think what I was saying before when we had our Zoom call, this is, yes, there's performance practice and all of that, but I think much of this is not necessarily it's not primarily about singing it right. It's about understanding. Whether or not you sing it, we all read things, we all study things that may not be what we actually do ever in life, but we have knowledge of it, right? And so that's really the most important thing. Whether you actually sing it and want to become proficient in the style and study it, the thing about it is acknowledging the work, acknowledging this experience and these experiences and this music as you would anybody else. If you're gonna do it for Mozart, do it for Bach, do it for Hall Johnson, do it for Mr. Burley, do it for Miss Price, do it for Miss Bonds. I could go on. And Miss Zenobia Powell Perry, a name that's never brought up. Do it for Nora Holtz. Like there's all these. Shirley Graham Du Bois, who was Du Bois rather, who was W.E.B. Du Bois's wife, was a whole composer, activist, wrote operas, like fierce down. We don't even talk about these people, right? So if we're going to do it, at least have knowledge of it so that you can also be empowered to guide other people. That's a part of that allyship. That's a part of that accomplished work. So I'm looking at the score, and I'm just going to read what Mr. Johnson says about his stuff. As I said on our Zoom call too, Mr. Johnson is very much like, I have it done like this for a reason. Follow what I say. Okay? Don't deviate from it. That's disrespectful. And if you want to do everybody else right, these are my rules. Or not just my rules, but the rules of this engagement, the rules of this style. So this is what he says. Note, observe carefully the differences in mood of the three stanzas. In the slow, free treatment of the first verse, cut the word butte very short with the sound of T. Treat the word about And the last line, the same way, but go on immediately without taking a fresh breath. Guard against and dive. So like instead of I've been buked and dive, and I've, it should be and I've. So it's not, so we still are doing somewhat of dialect, but he's so learned. He was still going to have I've. It wasn't I've been buked, but I've been buked and I've been scorned. Yes, okay, all of that. That's the first treatment. Let's just do that. Cool? Do, 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 do. So, I've been buked and I've been scorned. Remember driving that truck? Yes. So, and those who have yes, it's a swell on it. So, scorn, yes. Now, with the soprano line, I've been buked and I've been scorned. And so again, the stopping is still singing. Even when you're taking a breath, it's still singing. Okay? One more time. Do, 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 I've. Ready, 2, 3.
I've been buked and I've been scorned. Yes,
You got to be with me though.
Sorry.
Now the other thing is, getting a little bit of jazz singer.
Nope.
Just a little bit. Always keep the vowel. All of those vowels. The vowel integrity is important. So, been buked. All of that should feel all the time. And O are inside. That is going to be that and O are your primary vowels in the back space, in the front space, all the way in through. And then you put all the rest of the vowels and consonants inside of that. Okay? That makes sense? Ready? 2, 3.
I've been buked and I've been scorned. Yes, I've been buked and I've been scorned.
Yeah, keep the vowel. Drive the truck. So you never drive and going this way. And if you do, I'm scared to ever get in the car with you. We will not be doing that. So we'll do it. Ready to forward this way.
Children.
Good. Now let's add the alto.
That's a hard one to pick
It
out in the
is
middle,
really hard.
honestly.
Children. Ready, 2, 3, and
Children.
good. Children. Now the thing is, you have the most different line. You got it's just flow. And I think about children. Children is a wail for the soprano line. So it's children. Like it's like children. Like just go, girl, I don't know. Just say that. Say it. We're gonna try something awkward. Girl, I don't know.
Girl, I don't know.
Girl, I can't take it.
Girl, I can't take it.
Children.
Children.
Child.
Child.
That's it. That's what
Okay.
children is. Children. Okay? Everybody. So children. Ready, 2, 3, and I keep trying it to you. It's cool. Let's go from the top.
I'm just gonna not pay attention. No, it's
Right, because this hand is really for you.
Okay,
Sorry.
got it.
Okay. Do, 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 do. Again, I know the tuning was like a little weird. Does it matter? The idea is getting the style right. We're going to get it right because we're going to go into the line. So let's try to get do, 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 do from the top. Ready, 2, 3. I get Thank you! Automatically change the entire color of the whole thing. I love it. Ready, 2, 3.
I've been duped and I've been scorned. Yes, I've been duped and I've been scorned. Children, I've been duped and I've been scorned. That was he's like, the rabbit was holding the hand up there and everything, and we all just.
Yeah, I got some extra batteries
That's right.
because I think my hand.
The Energizer Bunny.
Okay.
ran out
I think it broke. Okay, we're back. Last stanza. In the strong, determined third verse, see that the vocal line is not interrupted after the word religion. Sustain the O instead of the N. So what he means by that in religion, so it's that the word would be religion. Ain't gwine lay my religion down, religion. So don't go to the into religion down. No. And that no is like no. It's not as much of a no. Or maybe it will change. I may say no ain't, or I may say no ain't. Who knows what's gonna happen? Ain't gwine lay my religion down. No. Ain't gwine lay my religion down, children. Ain't gwine lay my religion down. Ain't gwine lay my religion. And sometimes I have the bass go down, down, or maybe not. I don't know. But we're gonna do it. But he says the third verse is strong, determined. That means that's the march. That's the protest. That's the resistance. I've acknowledged that I got things going on with me and my folk that also are in many ways attributed to the system that is oppressing me. Then I recognize and acknowledge that the world got a bunch of bull going on too. So it's not just me. We all dealing with some of the same stuff at different levels. And then by this last one, because I understand all of that, I got to keep fighting. So my purpose has to still be present. I'm not going to lay my religion, my focus, my beliefs, the core of who I am, I'm not going to let it go. Even if I die, it's so interesting. I was talking about it with a colleague last night. It was interesting that they have songs, like you have the song, Oh Freedom. And you have, oh freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. But you were a slave. But you still didn't accept that's who you were. That's not laying the religion down. My body may be, but my mind ain't. And even when my mind seems like it is, because of mother, because of the internal source, I recognize, and I will come back to it in some way, shape, or form, that there's purpose beyond this. I'm not bound. I can rise above it. And if I can, then we can, and then we're all gonna go. That's why it's important that we say, I ain't gonna lay my religion down. Okay? Do, 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 do. Ain't gonna lay my religion. It's a march. Ain't gonna lay my religion down. Ain't gonna lay my religion down. Remember, oh. Say oh. Oh. Now don't go to ooh, because that's a diphthong. Oh. Good. Da 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 da. 1, 2, ready. And that's not a march. Lay my lid. It's got to hit on that each and every time.
How are you going to transition between those?
We'll see.
To give us a tempo.
We'll see.
We better. I'm kidding.
Ready, 2, 3, and.
Lay my religion down. No. Lay my religion down. Children. Lay my religion down.
I didn't say soft though. That was still out. I came down.
Okay.
Got it.
Subtle. It was subtle.
It's
We're learning.
yeah. It's good and subtle. Hey, da, same thing. Ready, 2. Good march though. So from the beginning.
Oh.
Hey, guan my, hey, guan lay, hey, guan lay. Ready, 2, 3.
Lay my religion down. No.
Yes.
Lay my religion down. Children. Lay my religion down.
Big.
Lay my religion down.
Some mission that. Hey, so hey, guan lay my religion. Hey, guan lay my religion. Hey, guan lay my religion. Then down. So let's do that last one. Hey, guan lay my religion. Hey,
Last.
hey. Do the very last phrase.
Got it.
Ready, 2, 3, and.
Hey, guan lay my religion down.
That's it. I may point to you, I may not.
I didn't know I'd have a solo. Wow.
Well, that's also the exciting thing about it, right? You might, I've done it. Tamar's not here, but I've done it one time. We were singing something, and I was like, okay, go for high note. And she was like, oh, me, yes. I said, sing this, and she knew exactly what I wanted. Because it's intuitive.
It's okay.
It's often intuitive. So it may just be like, go.
Loud.
Okay, we're going. Right? That's the beauty of the music making. How did that third verse feel? It's going to be a lot.
It's good.
There are different moods. That's the march. There's the shifting. There's the fight. Let's do the whole thing.
I've been rebuked and I've been scorned. Yes, I've been rebuked and I've been scorned. Children.
Yes.
I've been rebuked and I've been scorned. I've been talked about, shows you mourn. There is trouble all over this world. Yes, there is trouble all over this world. Children, there is trouble all over this world. There is trouble all over this world.
Marching. And.
Hey, gonna lay my religion down. No. Hey, gonna lay my religion down. Children. Hey, gonna lay my religion down.
Good. Thank you, First U. Thank you, Jay, and First UU. Thank you, NMAAM. Thank you, 353 Media. Thank you to you wonderful assemblage of singers,
Thank you.
artists, and people. And UU Huntsville. Shout out to UU Huntsville. Thank you, ancestors. Thank you, divine spirit. Thank you, freedom fighters. Thank you, CT Vivian.
Yes.
Thank you, John Lewis.
Yes.
Thank you, Reverend Lowry.
John Lewis.
Thank you, September Clark. Thank you, Fannie Lou Hamer. Thank you, Ella Baker. Thank you, my great-grandparents who were sharecroppers, Ma Pearl and Daddy Fred Slocum. Thank you to my late pastor, Reverend Moses Herring and his wife, Lilybell Herring from Friendship. Thank you to, D.B. Todd, and thank you to Dr. Boyd, and all of these people. Thank you to Frederick Douglass, who spoke on this land. Thank you, Ella Shepherd Moore, and the original Jubilee Singers, because this music would not be here if it wasn't for them. Thank you, John W. Work. Thank you, Hall Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Burley, Henry Thacker Burley. Thank you, Florence Price. Thank you, Margaret Bonds. Thank you, Zenobia Powell Perry. Thank you, Ella Fitzgerald. Thank you, Aretha Franklin. Thank you, C.L. Franklin. Just thank you to all that's gathered in the moment, because all of it matters. Thank you, oh my goodness, Scott Joplin. Just thank you, Shirley Graham Du Bois. Thank you, W.E.B. Du Bois. Thank you, Booker T. Washington. All of this matters. Thank you, William Dawson. Thank you, Alvin Ailey. Thank you, goodness, the founder of Dance State of Harlem. I see your face. Arthur Mitchell. Ashe. Thank you, Arthur Mitchell. Thank you, just so many people. Thank all of you for this moment. Just taking a breath and release. Taking it again, breathe in and release. Remember that doubt does not live on this land. Fear doesn't live on this land. Fear is a natural response, but that is not absence of bravery. It is not absence of freedom. It is not absence of the wanting for something better. It's a good thing to feel all the emotions, to have the doubts, but not to allow the doubts to manifest, to stop you from doing what you need to do and have to do and what you're called to do. Thank you. Thank you, Ashe. Beauty, great. Peace and love, blessings.
Wow. Wow. Let's all take a breath together. Thank you so much, Patrick. The end of that with fear does not live on this land, doubt doesn't live on this land. I want to acknowledge something, if I may. As we got closer and closer to this workshop, I started to feel nervous. I want to be a good ally. I want to be a good friend to you and a colleague. And it's really, I had trouble after you educated me to use the term Negro Spiritual. Like, my heart would race every time I was like, I'm gonna say this word to refer to these pieces this way. And I want to acknowledge that I hope that I do never make offense or stumble. And I hope that that comes across in our conversation today.
You know, I'm glad you, that's my first time seeing all of that. So I was just like, oh, wow. there was a lot, you know, of course, you were always looking at ourselves and critiquing everything that we do. But thank you for acknowledging that. A couple of things I kind of want to mention where we were. It's in the chat from also another great leader and music educator that's already said this, Miss Nita Smith, Mrs. Smith, talking about where we were on this land of Hadley Park, right? And there's a lot of sort of in Nashville, and there's a lot of different information out, but the main narrative is basically that this was this Hadley Park was the former Hadley Plantation. That's the main story. Now there are others, right? But that's the main story. That and there is pretty much overall evidence that this land, of course, definitely was a plantation. Now who it's named for exactly is up in the air, but this was a plantation. And then also, I want to say 1873. Why I also acknowledge Frederick Douglass was because like going back, the Hadley Plantation. So let me go back a little bit. The Hadley Plantation was the the park rather eventually became basically the first African American park in the country, or at least among the first. So it's like the papers say, I think it was the Nashville Globe was like the black paper saying that this was essentially the first park of its kind in the country. So cut from a plantation, and then on this land is a big house. And Frederick Douglass comes to Nashville in 1873 at the invitation of folks, and he speaks on the front porch to the Black community and others gathered who would be in some sort of allyship, if you will, but to the Black community of Nashville at that time. Then he goes down the street and he views the construction of Jubilee Hall, and all of this stuff. It's really, really interesting to be where we were, right? Again, I will keep saying it, the ancestors make no mistake. But going further to what Jay was talking about, and also I'm gonna just say this, like Jay knows to cut me off because I can go. And I wanna make this fairly succinct, but going further into, what is in a name? Why do we call it Negro Spiritual? And I know that in many ways it became, I think even starting somewhat in the 70s and going forward, particularly like in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of movement in terms of calling this particular, style of music the African American or the Afro-American spiritual. Or sometimes just saying spiritual and not including the designation of the people. That also came at the time of a different Black consciousness too. Black people moved from being called Negro to colored, to finally wanting to wanting to be and have agency. And so now calling it African American, recognizing the African ancestry. The thing is, and I'm going to read something, but the thing is, the people and the ancestors who created and who developed and who sang these songs were not Afro or African American. That's something that may belong to me now, like to those of us Black folks living now, that we can say maybe Afro-American or African-American or Black. We have that. But at that time, they were Negro, they were colored. And so I'm gonna read something from Dr. Uzi Brown, the chair of music at Morehouse College. He's a dear mentor, and just a leader and elder in this work. Brilliant composer, brilliant arranger. And this is what he says. At the time of the creation of the folk songs, which we come to know as the Negro Spirituals, slaves in America had absolutely no status as Americans and were not recognized as American citizens. And indeed, in some cases, not even recognized as full human creatures. They were considered chattel property. So we had no American status. Thus, we were only viewed as African or Negro slaves, at least up through the Civil War Reconstruction era. The Negro Spiritual as a genre of folk music, created by Blacks in America, is primarily a product of the 18th and 19th centuries. The kinder, gentler, and more acceptable way of identifying these people was as Negro, not Negra or Negra or Negra or the other N-word. The name Negro was considered a respectable identifier for Black people in America well into the 20th century and right up until the 60s. The only earlier reference to African American as a vernacular term by Black people appeared in 1899, Baltimore, Maryland. But Negro and colored were not only the acceptable, but the preferred designation of Black people until about the 60s. The widespread use of the expressions Black, Afro-American, and African American does not gain any formidable acceptance until the 50s. The name Negro Spiritual bears all the marks of oppression, racism, slavery, and suffering befitting that category of music. It is not a mark of shame, but a tool of survival. The word African American for the spiritual is a contemporary application and not a part of a revisionary history. Consider some of the nation's most prominent organizations of the 20th century: the National Association of Negro Musicians, the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs, the National Negro Baseball League, the National Negro Golf Association, the United Negro Fund. So Dr. Brown is basically saying that was acceptable at the time. We haven't gone back and changed all of those organizations. And to his fourth point, the Negro Spiritual, saying Negro Spiritual bears all of that weight. Because I named a bunch of ancestors and also those who are doing the work. Dr. Brown is still here. Dr. James Abington is still here. There are many scholars who are still here. There's many people who are still on this side who is doing the work. But the ancestors who really, like where I've been built, the melody, the song, the words, where all of that came from, we don't know their names. We don't know, where they were, who they were. We don't know their full stories. And so if we can give them some sort of, name them in some way, name them and say their story by who they are, by who they were, at least at that time. I think also I want to slightly pivot and talk about when I said about that old freedom and before I be a slave, they were enslaved. So they weren't slaves, but they were enslaved. Mm-hmm. And so give them some sense of dignity, also giving them some meaning about who they were and what they experienced at whatever level that was. I don't care if they were in a house, if they were in a field, how far down in Louisiana, Mississippi, and what have you, even going west, how far up north they were in Maryland, and even parts of New York and Philadelphia, and what have you. It doesn't matter. Give them the honor of acknowledging them, because we say African American, that's good for us to make us feel good. I'm just personally not in the space of making anybody else feel good. We're not gonna sanitize this. Right. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good.
Yeah. Thank you. Some of how this conversation came to be was the discomfort that my choir felt, and I wonder, the quartet is on the call with us right now. Is Brian, Lori, Peg, and Tom, thank you again. Would any of you like to take a couple minutes and share with the gathered assemblage how this transformed you? Peg, I see your hand first.
So yeah, I'm wrestling with the terms Negro and African American and lowercase Black and uppercase Black as an editor, and the fact that we can't share all the theory and explanation when we in other contexts. So that's not something we're going to solve in 2 minutes here. So, but it's hard to summarize the whole experience, because it was not just the taping, but also the conversations before it and after, and talking about representation and compensation and local cultural institutions, what they, their recognition or lack thereof of local talent, which is world class, feeling conflicted about Porgy and Bess, and a lot of threads are just going to keep popping up again and again. Porgy and Bess, Kara Walker, the artist, is her work is coming to Nashville next year, and she does a book on Porgy and Bess and brings up the same things that Patrick does in terms of the appropriation and racism. During the class, we also talked about, the wrestling stance. I've seen that in Massachusetts. I've seen that elsewhere. So, it's all tied together. what Patrick is talking about is not divorced or separate from the larger traditions of good singing and good teaching and good. We touched on Mr. Alvin Ailey in Revelations, and that keeps coming up. You know, one of my clients this week was just like, I saw it in college and it changed my life. So really, there's all that swirling around. And then there's also just, I just really miss live ensemble singing. And this is the first time I've done it since March. You know, I've done distance sings, that's all well and good, but it's probably not going to be safe for a long time. And so I'm grateful that we could make it happen the way we did in such a meaningful place and on such a meaningful day. And so thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Huntsville. Thank you, NMAAM. Thank you, Laurie, Brian, Tom. And also thank you to all my peeps and colleagues watching this. I love you all.
Thanks, Peg. Tom.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, let's see. Well, I super enjoyed this, and it's great to be able to be made a better singer in a very short amount of time, and also be made a better person over the course of all the discussions and planning this and the follow-ups. Let's see, I was really happy and thankful that we hung on to this through the pandemic. Seems like one thing that could have been let go really easily, like so many other things. But I'm so thankful to everyone involved that we kept this, and had to be postponed again and again. And then finally, it fell on the day after John Lewis passed. And that became so apropos. I had seen earlier that morning several pieces regarding John Lewis and his life, that he always thought that change was possible that day, today. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to go into this with that kind of a mindset. You know, you wonder, what can we all do to make change? And as musicians, we can make music that makes change. We can make positive relative music. We can write that kind of music. So it was really special and spiritual to be able to join this session on that day. I guess there was one other item, but I can't think of it now.
Thanks, Tom. Patrick, when I invited you to work with, this started as Pam and I wanting to have our choirs have an exchange, and we're about 2 hours apart and geographically, and I invited Patrick to be our clinician, and we were talking about the social justice themes that we had thought of in advance of my talking to him. And so in our conversation, you know, I talked about how I wanted to find a bridge to help our choirs sing, you know, Negro spirituals more authentically, or authentic isn't the right word. It's be more honoring of that. And so can you share how it is that you chose I've Been Buked as the piece that we brought to our choirs?
Yeah, you know, in many ways, so the Negro Spiritual, and this is going to help us lead to where we're going. As Dr. Abington, I'm going to reference a lot of these folks, as Dr. Abington would say, and some others, the Negro Spiritual, I want to get his quote right, was just such ready music for protest, for resistance, for social music, for social movements. There is a double, and even my good big sister, Dr. Lisa Lola Jones would say, a multiple consciousness that exists within the Negro spiritual. And then that many ways, you know, of course, splinters out into other music that is developed, you know, in part or from the Negro spiritual, right? So every single time you sing the songs, the words may seem to be very personal. They may seem to be very one direction. It may seem to be like, oh, this is just about praise. It's just about suffering. It's just about this. And it's like, no, there's a lot happening, because you have to bear in mind the experiences of the people singing them. Dare I say that then, as even to now, there is really, and I mean, I think about it a lot, and I'm sometimes hesitant to say it, but there's really no, there's no part of life in many ways for Black Americans and for other communities, but particularly for Black Americans, that is not touched or influenced by the dominant sort of systems. And there's no, like we're not like this at this time, you know, people were not in control of their bodies, you know, even in control of, you could fall in love, you could marry, but that didn't mean anything. You know, you could have children, that didn't mean anything though, right? So all of this matters when we're talking about the Negro spiritual. So when I came to I've Been Buked, I thought about it, for one, because Hall Johnson is also one of the old school masters. It's one of the older and the elder masters of the style of the Negro spiritual. We could have easily gone to, you know, some people we respect, Moses Hogan. I also have good friends, Colin Lett, Marcus Garrett, Jasmine Barnes, Brittany Boykin, like many great composers, and I'm gonna get in trouble if I keep trying to name them all. Jarrell Gray, like, okay, I'm gonna get in trouble, so let me stop. Anyway, there's so many of these people that we could have gone to, but Hall Johnson comes, like Mr. Dawson, like many others, coming directly from, not far removed from the experience of the enslaved. Like not many years, like great grandparents and family members being enslaved, coming from Georgia, right? So wanted to use his work also against someone who was very aware of what it meant to do this music, or what it meant to write this music, and falling directly in lineage of like Burley and such. The other side about it is the text, the way it's set, the way he treats each verse. Mm-hmm. And I'm going back a little bit to what I said in the video. The first verse, I've been buked and I've been scorned. Children, I've been talked about, show as you born, or shows you born. I have been rebuked, I've been scorned, I've been hurt, I've been pushed, I've been pressed, I've been admonished, I've been all of these things. And I've been talked about. They've hurt me, they've called me out my name. They called me a different name. They kicked me, like, and this has happened to me. It hasn't just happened because, you know, a lot of times hymns, and I'm not gonna go there, but a lot of times, sometimes like music becomes such a personal thing. It's like, oh, this is what you did to me, and I'm singing a song about what you did to me. Well, it's not what just the one-on-one interaction was, or just what my family and what did have in my household. All of this is also happening to me from outside and laying down. So I've been buked, and what does that mean? Even in the interpersonal collections. Then go to the second verse, there is trouble all over this world. Children, there is trouble all over this world. So not only me, I recognize that all these same kind of things are happening to me, people like me, people in other parts of the world that I don't even know about, that I've never seen, countries I've never named or never thought that are even possible. There is trouble all over this world. I know I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. So with that, going to the last one, so I talked about what's happening to me. I recognize what's happening to other people. What can I do? I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm not going to put down my sword. I'm not going to give up the fight. I'm not going to give up the push. I'm going to keep living. There's a song by Ricky Dillard. I can't believe I'm referencing Ricky Dillard here, but that's one of my favorite gospel choirs. But he has a song, keep living through this, because after this is the victory. Keep living. So I'm not going to stop living, because even the living and the fighting and the holding on to faith, holding on and surviving is the fight, is the push, is the resistance. And so if I keep living, maybe it's going to get better for somebody else. If I keep fighting and if I don't put my stuff down, it's going to get better for something else. That is and I wanted to really bring that into the conversation, because it's easy to say, it's easy for us to go like, oh, let's sing, a Sweet Honey in a Rock song. Let's sing We Who Believe in Freedom Cannot Rest, Ella song. That's easy. I love that song too. Don't get me wrong. That's a great one. One of my absolute favorites. It's easy to go there though. Let's go to what it really is to sing the resistance song of the ancestors. Like, let's pull out all the layers. Because again, if we pick it up just like at the first glance, oh, this is just what's happening. Okay, cool. No, dig into it. Pull off all the layers, because you got to remember, these are songs from people who only had but so much language available to them.
Right,
So
because they were taken from their home and their home language and then brought to America and had to learn a whole new language, not being taught it, but just
being told it. It's you being told the language, and so you just end up getting it. And so the other stuff that you're learning is, as opposed to going here, going there, doing this kind of work and knowing what's in the household or on the fields and what have you, you're also being herded, in a sense, to a worship space that, again, is not your own, and hearing other stories. And so you're actually wrestling with, especially when we use the stories of Moses and such, you're wrestling with, they saying freedom. And also, especially I love reading narratives, it's like slave narratives around the time of the Revolutionary War. And they're talking about freedom and they're talking about this, because the enslaved are overhearing it. And they're like, now y'all talking about this, y'all using the Bible, y'all using all this stuff, the same stuff that we're hearing, and you want to be free. I'm not accepting this, right? So again, that's why I chose, and why we're going to go move forward with I've Been Buked, because there are multiple layers that all have to exist when you sing it. Yeah.
Wow. So I've Been Buked. We talked on Saturday with the quartet about Mr. Johnson and his history and how he composed the song a little bit, and the history of the concert spiritual. How do mostly white choirs address singing in dialect without? How is there anything that you can offer to help us understand where did the dialect come from? There's a reason for it, right?
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So singing in dialect is always a little touchy subject. Sometimes it's even a touchy subject, even among Black artists singing these things.
Thank you.
There are several books about dialect. There, from some of our elders and our ancestors have written about those things. There are people who say you should only sing dialect. There are people who say don't do it on these types of songs or this arranger and such things like that. So there's like, it's all over the place. I think that with the spiritual, to a degree, it also has to be honest. What do you feel is most honest? Now, with that being said, for non-Black folks, for mostly white choirs and singers doing this music, I'm gonna present some things. The issue that I usually take with non-Black choirs singing spirituals is that oftentimes they're done cheaply. They're not done with the reverence and the deep work. I'm a countertenor and sing opera professionally and concert music professionally, all of that. I have to know Bach. I have to have studied German, did that in college and in grad school. I have to have read the treatises and the books on Bach. I remember I did a masterclass, using quick anecdote, I did a masterclass on early Italian monody in grad school with some noted people. And when they came into the room, I think it was Joshua Barifkin, who's a major Bach scholar. And I was doing this Caccini song on lute and such. And they said, and it went to not being about, but because most vocal masterclasses are about the singing. Oh, help the voice, da 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 da. They were so intentional about the style and the history and the authenticity. Joshua Rifkin said, well, does anybody have the original facsimile? Like, we have to do that when we're approaching other things. When we pick up, like I have over here, like this Handel, book of Handel arias for countertenor, basically. You know, this has all the text and from Berenaita and all of that stuff, all the translations, you know, it has references to the original scores. There's a lot of scholarship in that. What ends up happening though, when we sing spirituals, we don't do that scholarship. We just said, oh, I heard this great choir sing it. I should do it too. That was fun. Well, did you hear them sing like that? Oh, we should do it too. And close out the concert. And then if I have maybe 1 or 2 Black people in the group, hey, can you get up here and just really wail on them? Yeah, that's not. And then that gets into the point of, oh, well, this is the, you know, the Negro Spiritual. It's a gospel song. So go out there. No, it's not that. So you want a show. And not to get too excited, but you want me to put on that show. You want me to put on that minstrel show. That's what ends up happening. That's the thing. That's a thing that happens. Like that's what you want. We want to bring that. And I think that if you're going to sing him, the only way that I can advise someone to sing them who is not from the experience, and even for Black people, I'm not going to just say, because, you know, we have to respect our own stuff too. Now, the reason why I always give grace for folks, understand this. We got to respect our music just as much, but there are systemic reasons as to why we wouldn't. Okay, so it's not just we don't respect it and we got to look. No. Like there's some internalized pressured stuff that tells us that we're not supposed to. But, you know, understand that. So if you're going to do it, do the work behind it. Read everything you can, sit with it. It may mean, you know, we did this workshop. That may mean that I've been viewed as not sung in public for another, well, of course, we're in COVID, but beyond that, for another 3, 4, 5 years, at least to know, because there can be no sense of cheapening that comes into it. Don't get up there and just, oh, you know, no, study it. There are lots of books. I have a few that are even available, not mine, but just that are out there. There are lots of resources, there are lots of conversations. Until you sit down and do the work, don't touch it. Mm-hmm. Unless it's in a learning situation. You know, I'm at Tennessee State and I work with different universities around the country and high schools and music programs around the country and such, and all different sorts of folks. Do the work though. Like, invest in the work. Find the people. That's also going to be a part of that equity, right? Finding the people who know the stuff, bring them in regularly as the experts.
Right. Pay
them what you should. Like, that's going to be the thing. So if you want to know it, don't just say, oh, here's a song. Is there a song I know? Can you just throw it to me? No. I'm not going to throw you anything. Do the work. Learn it all. Because I even have to sit down with it, even though I'm of this experience. Even though, you know, I always reference my great-grandparents. My great-grandmother, my Pearl, Pearlie Mae Slocum lived to be 102. I knew my Pearl. They were sharecroppers in West Tennessee. I have gone into Marks, Mississippi, where my late stepfather, Charles Towner, was from, and been at his little churches, and where his father had walked with Dr. King and worked with Dr. King also as a pastor and a leader in that area in the country. And I picked a piece of cotton before. I know what it's like to have that in my hands. Mm-hmm. And also to have the experiences of when I was an undergrad, very fortunately to go to Africa and go to Ghana, South Africa and Ghana, and to feel like I'm home and to feel these different disconnects around. It takes a long time to even get into this, even for me. So this is a 10-year ongoing, at least, I wouldn't even say 10, maybe 15, I'm 32, 32-year ongoing process of still understanding this music. If you're not willing to do that kind of work, don't touch it. And because of that, now the thing is, I'll say there are alternatives.
And what are those?
Well, I always got something. Many of these same composers wrote other music. If you want to honor Black composers and
Yes.
you don't always get to do the work, still do the work. But dig into what Dr. Marcus Garrett, a good friend of mine, a brilliant composer who's at University of Nebraska, University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and is a Hampton University graduate, and that comes from the line of R. Nathaniel Dett and many others. They have what he talks about. He has a whole thing on non-idiomatic African-American music. I have in my hand here, this is some of the choral music of Florence Price. May not be able to see it, but this is her piece, Praise the Lord. It's a big old anthem, fabulous anthem. I also have, and this is from printed from Classical Vocal Reprints, Glendower Jones in Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, where her music is archived at the University of Arkansas. And then I also have here 44 Art Songs and Spirituals of Florence Price. Hall
And
Johnson has arts.
those are beautiful, beautiful works.
Beautiful works. Also, the thing is, like, there's texts when you have like the Florence Price art songs, Hall Johnson, even so many others, they use the text of their contemporaries and their friends. Paul Laurence Dunbar, Langston Hughes, and many other poets, County Cullen. There are composers living today. Dr. Daryl Nettles has stuff. My friend Dave Ragland, he has a book of spirituals and art songs too. And he has an art song I believe that's from text that was found in the on a wall in a concentration camp, I believe, in the sun and all of that. Then you also have the, I can't remember the poet's name, but the poet Black woman poet who wrote a poem called Martin Luther King Jr. He has an art song, Martin Luther King Jr. Roland Carter just put out a list, put out a book of spiritual art songs, if you will. So there are so many things out here. Roland Carter has a great arrangement of Hold Fast to Dreams, the text by Langston Hughes.
Yes.
So if you don't it's like, don't just say the spiritual. That's not the only music out there.
Right.
So that's not the only Black choral music there is. There is so much of it. Do the work on that too. But there are alternatives. Art song, non-idiomatic music, like by Black composers. There's so much of it. There's stuff that's being written now. So, that would be my advice. I mean, we can go deeper, and I'm going to shut up.
Thank you for all of that. And we have a resource document that I have to sort of disengage from our conversation for a minute to get it shared into the chat. But we, in our preparation, we talked about the music of today and Black people making music today. And can you, I want to take time for questions. We're shooting for 90 minutes, but I imagine questions may run over.
We may have a little time, it's fine.
But just to let people know what to expect, can you bring us there through the years of resistance and social justice and the movements from the 60s to all of the 80s and 90s and today?
Yeah. So we're gonna try to do that. I'm gonna do the best I can. So as Dr. Abington said, the spiritual is such ready music, easily to pick up. Oh freedom over me, before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm laughing because somebody said in 5 minutes. Yeah.
We're gonna do the best we can. It's easy to pick up, and even to change things, like over my head, instead of I hear music in the air, it's over my head I hear freedom, or I see freedom in the air, what have you. It's easy to pick up those kind of things. The reason why that was the music that's particularly of the civil rights era, of that, if you will, second Reconstruction, was because that's also where, like the Black church, where this music is being sung And as Dr. Marsha Kendall said, we were in an email exchange, you know, archived even in these Black churches as well. That's where that's coming from. And so that's also where these things are being organized. So it's very easy for everybody to gather in the church to do it. So they're going to pick up on what is culturally and most relevant to what's around. So that means that Mahalia Jackson is they're having a rally at a church, at a Black church somewhere, is going to pick up and start singing Joshua Fit the Ballad of Jericho. You know, that makes and the walls come tumbling down. That makes all the sense for them to do it. Now the thing is, and also much of Black music, not just the spiritual, but even the blues, jazz, of course, gospel, and we'll go into hip hop, and then other things that have influence of Black music, country music, bluegrass, Americana, what have you, all have the multiple or double consciousness. How I Got Over has multiple consciousness. The song by Jesse Dixon, the wicked shall cease from troubling and the weary shall be at rest, and all of the saints of the ages shall sit at his feet and be blessed, have multiple consciousness. The thing that happens, the further commercialization, the commercializing of gospel music shifts that consciousness some. You know, it becomes about, you know, and I don't think it doesn't void it, but it shifts it, because now the sounds are more sophisticated. The sounds are sleeker. There's a great recording by Walter Hawkins and the Hawkins and Love Fellowship and their choir, and they're singing an arrangement of We'll Understand and Say Well Done. And the opening is very jazz and Hollywood. It is like with Tremaine Hawkins on soprano and Edwin and Walter in the back, and they are singing down. And then here comes Daryl Coley, if when you give, like he runs your tail off. So it became a little bit more like I don't want to say Hollywood, but more, you know, there was more of the musicality that's brought in that has other influences and more popular and more sleek. And, you know, so what often happens with that too, what we're seeing as well, even now, is how, you know, if people know, and I'm trying to be very careful with this, but if folks know, oh, well, the Black church is where they gather, well, let's go to there. Let's go and engage with them. You know, and we have also the mega churches that come into prominence, and the mega churches are serving all sorts of people. So the mega church may not be a place, not to say that they're bad spaces. I'm a member of one in Baltimore. I love my pastor. I love my folks, but they may not be the place necessarily for the grassroots organizing. So the grassroots organizing, even with the Black Power movement, in Black arts movement of the 70s and going forward, starts to come out of the church. So the music is reflective of that. James Brown, though coming out of the church, Aretha Franklin has Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. Donny Hathaway, though having a church background, and Roberta Flack having Be Real Black for Me, and To Be Young, Gifted and Black, Nina Simone, like all of these things, they may have church influence, but it comes out, it's not under the church itself, as some of the same songs did. So that expands the freedom songs and the social justice songs that we have. You know, although it's not written by her, Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit, like when we read about Billie Holiday, there's not much of Billie Holiday that says, oh, she was a church girl, right? But she sings Strange Fruit. There's not much in the same way, you know, I can go on. But anyway, so as we get down today, folks in my generation and younger, you know, there's a lot of conversation happening where folks are like, the young people aren't in the church. Like, what are we doing? And it's like, and people are saying, y'all done left the church. And we're like, we may have left the church as the building, but we definitely have not left God. We haven't laid our religion down, right? What's happening is that our churches are when we gather, you know, to eat on Sundays or whatever. Our churches are when we go to brunch, you know. Our churches are just our communal kind of situations. Sometimes our organization is our organizing and such is happening on social media. It's in a DM, it's in a tweet. It's all that kind of galvanizing. Even the marches that are happening from a lot of young people, they're not happening in churches. So so for them, there's no real reason for them to use "Oh Freedom" and "Over My Head" and "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around," because that's church. In many ways, that's church. It's like, well, that's cool, but not everybody who's doing this is also in church either. We have people who are not just Christian. We have people who are all sorts of faiths who are joining in, who also look like this. Like, there's all sorts of stuff. So they're not going to pick that up. But what they will do is take what is relevant around them. So so I think that it also happens, the spiritual follows in line with, like, certain spirituals fall in line with, like, I love The Message by Grandmaster Flash. You know, don't push me, I'm close to the edge, I'm trying not to lose my head, you know, and it's like, and it falls in line with, like, the narrative spiritual. And it's talking about the broken glass everywhere and people just pissing in the halls of the projects and all of these kind of things, right? And it's like, this is pressure. That's just as akin to, Lord, how come me here? I wish I never was born. They stole my children from me. There ain't no freedom here, Lord. They treat me so mean here, Lord. Like, that is just as akin to the spiritual. Like, Lord, how come me here? And don't push me up close to the edge are directly in line, right? So, and that, even though it's not saying it's protest, because it's saying, this is what I'm going through. This is a mess. And I know where it's coming from. I may not say it explicitly, but I know where it's coming from. So now when they're in the streets, they're picking up on what's popular or what's relevant. So one of the things I love to see, there's a song, because everyone's like, where's the music? We got music. So what's popular? There was that video of that woman getting arrested and she was detained. She's like, why are you detaining me? Why are you detaining me? Well, catch this song. You are about to lose your job. You about to lose your job because you are detaining me for nothing. Hey, and everybody starts singing it. And there's remixes to it. We dancing, we grooving. You about to lose, and we're saying to the system, you about to lose your job. Like, and I also would say too, and this is where my mom and I had a conversation, you know, some of those songs have become so sterilized. Like, they may not necessarily become sterilized by the people who, like the earlier songs have in many ways become so sterilized. They may not have become like that to those of us who are in the fight, who are in the experiences. But to others, they're somewhat sterilized. It's easy to, you know, there are people, when we have King Day celebrations across the country, across the world even, and people who are doing the fighting and who are like holding us down or pressing us down in many ways, will stand right next to you, cross their arms and sing, "We shall overcome," very easily. Yeah. They will get up and say, "Oh, I admire Dr. King, a great man who believed in X, Y, and Z." It's very easy. And what it's a lot of people who said it, and I don't want to misattribute it. I think also Reverend William Barber says it too, and Roland Martin, so many other people. It's easy to honor the dead. Mm-hmm. It's easy to be like, oh, Dr. King was so great after you killed him. It's easy to do that, right? So y'all have taken "We Shall Overcome" and other songs, and though for many of us it's still a mantra, it's something to still put in the atmosphere because it is very true. It is universal, and we want that. But it's easy for those, like, it's easy for our governors and our presidents to stand up there and cross their arms and sing "We Shall Overcome" with us. It's easy for them to go into some of our houses of worship and communicate with us. But what they can't do is sing "We about to lose your job." Like, you can't sing the same song with me if you really, because singing has that frequency, right?
Yes.
So you really can't sing the same song with me if you're not really trying to fight. You singing "We Shall Overcome" because it's lost something for you. But you about to lose your job, and even like Dr. Deborah Smith Pollard, there's a video that came out, I think in Chicago and some other protests, and they use Kirk Franklin's "Revolution." And there aren't many gospel artists. There are some, but there aren't a whole lot of gospel artists in popular culture and what's out now that are really speaking to the times and are sitting in that double consciousness and multiple consciousness. But artists like India Ari, artists like Hammond, the old Kanye, I said it, artists like Jill Scott, artists like Erykah Badu, many, many others, Kendrick Lamar, are speaking to the multiple and double consciousness of what everybody, Black folks going through this fight are. So if that helps in the relevance and why people are like, oh, we don't see. No, they're singing. And they're also making beats. That's the other thing. They're making beats. You About to Lose Your Job has a whole remix.
Yep.
The technology behind how we're creating it is different. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. So I'd like to invite Pam. Do we have some questions in the chat?
We have a question from Kathy Abramit, I think is how you say it. She says, as a researcher librarian who works with spirituals, I'm curious how you define spiritual. I've seen a number of anthologies that contain, for example, This Little Light of Mine. That particular song was written by Harry Dixon Lowes. He was a white guy who studied at Moody Bible Institute. As I'm working with indexing spirituals, I feel strongly that they need to be authentic. And I'm inclined to not include songs like This Little Light of Mine. What are your thoughts? Thank you for your guidance.
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw that and I'm glad I saw that question and I was like, ooh, I'm really excited about this.
Good.
Because like, I want to say this, there is, with This Little Light of Mine, there are roots before the Harry Dixon melody of This Little Light of Mine. So there are like African roots of This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. That's one particular melody of This Little Light of Mine, as opposed to This Little Light of Mine is the call, and then I'm gonna let it shine, right? So it's important to kind of recognize those two distinctions. Also, again, there are multiple types of spirituals. So let me make sure I get it right. There is the narrative spiritual, there is the sorrow song, there's the jubilee, and there's the work song. But then there are also spirituals. That's why it's important to say a thing that is a Negro spiritual, and then there are things that are other types of spirituals. Dr. Alicia Lola Jones and I was talking about why you don't just say spiritual, because there are spirituals of of these folk songs from Appalachia that could be noted and called Appalachian spirituals, right? So there are all sorts of these other designations. So as you're categorizing and putting things together, look at the melodies, look at where they're coming from, and they may even need a different sort of placement within that. So there would be the Negro spiritual, and then there would be and then there would be spirituals or folk songs of other folks. And also another one I want to bring into the consciousness is a piece, what's the thing? Going Home. Now, Going Home, from that pulls the melody from Anthony Dvorak, who was a teacher of Harry T. Burleigh and was a Czech composer who was he was so almost obsessed with folk music and was like, okay, the spirituals, and he's the one who encouraged Burleigh to set them like he did. He's like, yo, these songs are like the truest, most American music. You gotta archive that. You gotta set that and preserve that. So he's influenced by hearing the songs that Burleigh is bringing, Swing Low, Deep River, Go Down Moses, so on and so forth, that he gets from New World Symphony. Then William Arms Fisher, again, a white man, takes that and adds text to it and makes it an art song. So, and then I remember I was reading something that talked about at the time, because there was such a, because racism is and was very real, was well, I mean, if we have to have spirituals, at least let them come from William Arms Fisher. So there were people, of course, not Black, who were saying, let the white people do the music. So it's important to sort of designate where they fall in line. And it may mean really tightening on that really, really deeply. But that would be what I'd say, because there's but looking at the different types of melodies, where they're used, where they kind of have crossover to, is important, if that helps at all, I hope.
Thank you. I want to draw attention to another link that was in the chat. Nita Smith posted www.colorofmusic.org. And also Jay has put in the chat the PDF for all of these wonderful resources. So we should be sure and check that out.
There's on that resource sheet, Patrick took the time to make playlists on, was it Spotify and Apple Music?
Spotify and Apple Music, yeah.
There's a stirring playlist linked on that PDF, and I cannot wait to listen to it.
It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff that it draws correlations to the multiple consciousness. There are some spirituals, there is some gospel, there's some hip hop, there's some soul, there's some R&B, there's some protest songs. It's, there's some of everything, and I'm even at times still adding to it. But yeah, it's a long thing. I didn't realize how long it was. I was like, oh, this is long, but that's what a playlist is. So just go for it. And then I know and I want to make sure that Dr. Marsha Kendall Smith is recognized, because she would, always say uppercase and Negro. We were emailing last night, and I was typing, like, running to the gym, and I just put the lowercase Negro, and she was like, I was shocked, but I was like, I'm sorry. Usually, like, my autocorrect catches that. Capitalize that, please. Again, more dignity to the ancestors. There's just so much happening in the world, and it's very important that we definitely remember all those deep roots of where this comes from, and all of that. Let's see. Dr. Kendall actually has something to say, and I would love to hear from her if it's possible to bring her in. Yeah. But definitely want to hear from her, a great worker in this field, in this thing. So if we can get to her, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am the president of the National Association for the Study and Performance of African American Music. That was established in 1972 when a group of African American musicians left MENC, which was then called the Music Educators National Conference, because after all of this music, they were not represented at that conference. So they walked out and walked across the street. The conference was held in Atlanta, walked over to Morehouse College and started NASPAP. But I wanted to get back to what I saw Patrick do with 4 singers. I had no idea the format of this program, but I was impressed by a quartet who had obviously memorized the music. And I was impressed by Patrick, who could conduct it from memory, start wherever in the score, give the correct pitches without a piano. Usually you see conductors with the aid of an accompanist always giving the pitches. I was also impressed that I could close my eyes and not recognize that you were white. What I mean by that is people have the wrong idea when they think that only Black people can sing spirituals the way they should be sung. Anyone can sing them when it is taught properly. And that's what Patrick kept emphasizing throughout this program. But the problem that exists in so many churches, I'm glad they're singing them, but they're singing them too fast. they don't understand the history. Another pet peeve of mine are these white music directors who are constantly looking for new arrangements, got to have a new arrangement, something new. They ought to go back to the original, which the people don't know, the choirs don't know, and teach that. And then they get the impact of what's so meaningful in the message. I call them sanitized spirituals. I happen to belong to a church choir like that, and it just takes all of my energies just to sing those songs, just to be a part of the group. But, so he's not listening, but maybe I'll tell him about this.
The replay will be available on YouTube in a few hours.
Oh, no.
Well, I want to go to something that thank you so much, Dr. Kendall Smith, for that.
Thank you.
I want to go to something that she said about them being too slow. And we, again, in our email exchange we had, one of the things that we have to recognize about the experiences of the enslaved, again, the people, our ancestors were not in control of their bodies and of their time. However, in some cases, in a few cases, many, that can be researched and looked into, there were places where, you could go and have a worship service and that would be free. You would have your worship service. And so you took your time in worship because that was your one place that you didn't have, as Toni Morrison would say, you were free of the white gaze. And so they were going to pull in some of them. So they didn't always remember the melodies, but then they did remember parts of the melody, which is what influences the melodies of the spirituals, and then remembering the stories. And I think that's also just as brilliant. Remembering the stories, remembering the Bible stories, remembering some of the scriptures that are told audibly, and then remembering the text of the hymns. And so then they're putting those into it. So when you start singing these songs, that's why I've been buked, and they're gonna like dig into it for a long time and then have the variations of it. And then every time I feel the Spirit having some of that, I would almost call it Pentecostal fire, right? And then, the one chance that you could actually get up and move and dance and communicate with Spirit and communicate with ancestors happens in that space. So now your body is free to undulate, and you're free to like shake and shout and move. And also even why you would drag it out. You wanted to enjoy some sense of freedom for as long as possible. So even the idea of the lined hymns or the metered hymn, there's a call and there's a response. So you have a hymn like, or even text, but a hymn like a charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, to serve this present age, my calling, all of that. So there's a charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a charge to, I'm about to get forward right now, keep I have a God, and they just gonna drag. And it's nothing like and it's very, like the line hymn singing is very much being lost. We don't sing them anymore as much as we should. I know there are still a few churches in Memphis that will start doing it. And when you sit there, and I'm telling you, every single time I watch it, even on YouTube, or go into a space that doesn't, I lose it. I have what we call a Baptist fit, because the entire thing has so much ancestral memory. They start singing these songs, and a charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, to serve this pleasant age, has protest and fight in it. A charge to keep I have, when the enslaved and when the oppressed sing it, has a different meaning. A charge to keep I have in a Christian, Protestant, Anglican sense is just, I'm going to get everybody to become a Christian. A charge to keep I have for the Black folks who are singing this is, I want people saved, but you got to be saved so you can do this work, so we can all get free to serve this present age, what's going on in this present age. It takes on different meaning, and we were always able to, to subvert and just twist around that. So that's why it's important to recognize where that comes from, and also the kind of chanting and the call and response that even happens in hip hop. And what we hear, like, the calls that if you hear a HBCU marching band do certain things, hey, like that's all in the same root. That all is communal. This is the one place that we can feel like we're free. So yeah, just wanted to bring that into how it correlates.
Thank you. I am struck speechless, which my choir will attest is not an often thing.
I'm just trying to think about.
the topic is so rich, and you have helped put words, I think, on things that I know it's my job to do the research, and also I'm struck by how my conductors, and someone in the chat also shared that our conductors didn't go this deep with us as they taught us Every Time I Feel the Spirit, or Ezekiel Saw the Wheel, or, you know, and how can we all be better conductors, whether we educate and inform our choirs on these pieces. And, you know, for me, there's an element of I love that you brought up singing non-idiomatic music by Black composers, because we need to make sure that we are amplifying all of these voices. And you know, that's part of my desire for this conversation, and the relationship that I hope continues to build among our organizations. So
I mean, yeah, that's going to be so key, is everybody taking the time to do their work, and always checking. The biggest word that I've been given in the spirit for a long time has been intention. Taking the time to check your intention. What do you really want from it? Because a lot of times when we do some kind of work, it's to make us look good, it's to make us feel good. That's nice, praise, but what do you really want to see? And that may mean some sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
That may mean some getting out of the way. That may mean some, and it's not even a giving up, because I think that that's also what a lot of this is about when we're into protests. And a lot of people who are saying, you know, even the idea of Black people saying that our lives just matter. You know, and there's even something to that about us just telling people and trying to ask, like, hey, I matter, just to say I matter, right? There's layers to that. And now people are latching on and giving and going into that kind of, and being a part of the partnership of that. But it's like, why do you want to? Is it, again, because you want to look good, or do you also want to, again, control the narrative? And and this is the thing, and that's the thing to think about, like being careful of like going in and investing and not controlling the narrative. Because what most people would want to do is, if you make an investment, you want to feel like you have a say in it. You may not need to have a say in it. You may just need to sit back and invest in it. And if that's the case, then don't invest in it then. If you say, I gotta have a say, you don't necessarily have to. So sometimes it means a sacrifice. Sometimes it means butting out. Sometimes it means dropping in and not influence. Because I'm not trying to get in trouble and go too far. But sometimes the influence financially and to movements and such changes a lot of the direction in the course of what we do. There's a great article, and I wish I could find it, and hopefully something can be sent out, but it was about how the foundation dollars sort of changed what was much of the intent of the second reconstruction of the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And it became about integration, and as opposed to just equity. I'm not messed up with integration. That's good to a degree if we're also going to integrate from Black to white, white to Black. What ended up happening was the things that were Black closed and suffered. Schools, colleges, like businesses closed, because now everybody could go over here, and that was also presented as the better. There were still ideas of, of even institutions, even in this very city of Nashville and across the country, as being the better. And so then we started devaluing as a whole what the people had built and had in their spaces. So we can't do the same thing with the music.
Right.
The music can't be done the same way And, you know, that's why I'm such a big advocate for HBCUs, because the HBCUs are in many ways like the church in some ways, but the HBCU in many ways are some of the most long-standing institutions to Black progress. And what that means, it doesn't just look like, you know, integrating in, but it also means building up within. And so, yeah, it's just important that sometimes you may not necessarily need, if you invest, take your mouth off of it, take your comments off of it, you know, take your influence off of it. You can join in, you can be a part of the fight, sit back sometimes and just listen. And I'm appreciative of a lot of people like listening. I'm seeing a lot of folks, even in the comments, they're just making comments like, thank you for this, thank you for this, thank you for this. I'm appreciative of the questions too. And please, you know, I'm gonna let them defer to that, but having more. But, you know, this idea I'm using, kind of borrowing from, what's her name? Karen Hunter. She has a show on Sirius XM talking about breadcrumbs. And this is just to give breadcrumbs. This is just to give breadcrumbs to start, for folks to start doing some work. There's a resource list that Jay has put in the chat. You know, so before we close out, definitely download that, get those links, go to listen to stuff, and go on spirals. Go on YouTube spirals, go on book spirals, go on Google spirals. The ancestors deserve it. And the next generation, like the spirals in terms of like trying to, you know, just like getting deeper and deeper, like let a breadcrumb lead you to the next point, and just keep going and going and going deeper into the music and to the stories and to the narratives. And let that, yeah, just go for it. Kathy said, she has one thing. Another thing I enjoy looking at the scriptural references in spirituals. There are some that seem to have different scriptural references in each verse, almost like a scriptural mashup. Is that born of the oral tradition and the longstanding growth of a spiritual, or what do you think of such scriptural mashups? Yeah, that's interesting. We kind of talked a little bit about that. Like a song like "Mary, Don't You Weep." There are a couple of "Mary, Don't You Weeps." Like there's, let's see. "Oh, Mary, don't you weep, tell Martha not to moan. Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, tell Martha not to moan." So, and then of course, the great recording that I love, and I love it because it follows in the narrative tradition of the spiritual, is Aretha Franklin singing "Oh, Mary, Don't You Weep" on her Amazing Grace album in 1972. And she said, we're going to review the story of two sisters called, and they had a brother named Lazarus. She goes all the way through, right? The reason why, and this is just my sort of, and looking at it, "Mary, Don't You Weep" happens New Testament. The story of the Pharaoh's army drowning in the Red Sea, Old Testament. The idea is to say, Mary and Martha, why are you weeping? Why are you moaning? I'm God. I've been God. So you can weep and moan, but don't weep, don't moan, because all the way back there, I proved that I could deliver. Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea. I got y'all through to the other side, and then I brought those walls in and drowned the whole thing. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. So then she tells a story about how Jesus said, well, for the benefit of you who don't believe, I'm gonna call him 3 times. And she says, Lazarus, 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 come forth. And Lazarus came up walking like a natural man. I told you I did it. I told you I could do it. I showed you I could do it. Why? Because Pharaoh's army drowned back then. Remember that? So don't weep, because watch this. Get up, Lazarus. And now I'm gonna sound like a preacher. So those Lazarus things in your life can rise up. Those things that we thought were dead can rise up, because I've done it before. You know, Jesus being the human manifestation of Christ. So there's reasons as to why they're always going to draw some correlation, Old Testament, New Testament.
Yeah.
I love that somebody says, I'm God, I've been God. Woo! I might shout. So, so that's why, like, you would see some of those things. And also another piece would be just because there are messages and mixed messages that have to go out. these are also very practical songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are very practical songs, like to tell somebody, follow the drinking gourd. Look at that, boom, boom, boom. Like, these are very practical songs to give instruction, to give movement. And so I can't always say, hey, you all meet me at this place at when the crow stalks, when the sun goes down, meet me over here at this lake. I may sing a Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. I may sing some of these other songs to kind of give some indication. Even Oh, the Angels Done Bowed Down has that. That's a narrative spiritual. Turn out the sun, go, but like maybe that's talking about, you know, about the movement of Jesus dying on the cross and what all happens when the sun, you know, when the sun blot out, even My Lord What a Morning, Wade in the Water, like all of these kind of things. They gonna give you, thank you, Dr. Kendall Smith, like they gonna give you all sorts of layers for you to like look at and move. And that's why it's gonna bounce between some scripture. And that's why it's even gonna bounce in between some personal anecdotes too. Yeah.
Awesome. So Patrick, is it okay for people to share the resource sheet that you sent out with other music educators?
Yes, definitely share. Please cite. Now, I don't say I don't consider myself, and I'm not trying to, this is not trying to sound grand or also demeaning. I don't consider myself to be the deepest and best scholar of this. I'm more of a practitioner in the field, and a descendant of the work. But it was very important for that resource sheet, you know, I love that Jay did to just simply say compiled by Patrick Dailey, and also listing the names of these people, you know, who are writing this stuff. So, I'm doing my best to always cite, you know, the people. Like somebody just brought up Alicia Jones. That's a good sister of mine. I'm the second chapter of her book about being a Black male, a younger Black singer at that time, developing into Black worship spaces and what that means, even also in the classical idiom and backwards and forwards, right? So I'm always trying to cite them and what they said, yes, because it brings them into the conversation, but also it should, in terms of the equity, start to lead other people to buy the resources, to seek them out and say, hey, you know something. And if you want to know the information, you would do it for anybody else. You would do it for anybody else. Write to them and adequately compensate them for the information that they're giving. If you don't have the budget, let us know. We will work with you. We ain't got no problem working with you. But be very honest and intentional and real with us. Like, you know, if you're gonna give somebody else, you know, buku whatever, to come in and do Bach, my colleagues and I should get buku as well, to come in and do this work. And also, you can call us to do more than just the spiritual, because I do know Bach. I do know early Italian monody. I do know new music. I do know all these other things. We're not limited. Right. We are just as capable of musicians and practitioners and scholars as anybody else. So.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kendall Smith wanted to make one more comment, and I want to definitely honor that.
One more. We could go for hours.
We could go.
I learned the spirituals at home and at the AME church as a child. And when I was first taught, I've been buked and I've been scorned. I didn't like it. I thought that buked rhymed with puked, and I refused to sing it. So when we were singing, I'd go, I've been scorned, just to show. Then I grew up. The experiences in life, your lives, can also add meaning to these spirituals. One point. The next point. Also think about the children when you're teaching spirituals to the children. Take the cues about what they get and what they're not getting, or why they like it or why they don't like it, and maybe you should talk about it. My conductor didn't talk to me about it, so I just didn't sing that word.
Thank you, Dr. Kendall.
Thank you.
Kendall Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody said,
Somebody, that's our collaborative pianist said.
uh-oh, okay, hi, Howling. Yes, I've heard your name before. Okay, I'll sing a little something. It was so funny, I did warm up. But there are ways you can follow me. So I'm like, okay, so I'm a millennial, right? So I'm almost at 10K followers on Instagram.
Woo.
So if y'all can follow me, that's my Instagram. At Patrick Dailey. Also, my Facebook, follow my Facebook fan page or supporter page. Putting that in here. There we go. So that's on Facebook. Follow that. My website is being developed and working on right now, so don't check it right yet. It's in construction or reconstruction. But follow me because I want to get them TK followers. And so hopefully get verified. Hey, I'm on a project under playlist, and some of it's there. I'm on a project from Louis York called American Griots. And yes, also like and follow NMAAM, please. It's called American Griots, and the song is called I Wonder. With myself, Louis York, Chuck Harmony, Claude Kelly, two major producers, Caroline Randall Williams, brilliant Black woman poet, storyteller, author, who is for Nashvillians, if you do a little research, she is the granddaughter of Avon Williams, very important in the city. And then also as a part of that, my group, the choral ensemble, the W Crim Singers, AKA Wakanda Chorale, and a professional ensemble and residents of the Big Blue Opera Initiatives at Tennessee State University. So if you follow me, I can lead you to all of those different places so you can keep up with all of the work that we're doing. I do have some things on YouTube, some I've put up, some that I haven't, but if you search my name, Patrick Dailey, Countertenor, you'll find a fair amount of performances of all sorts of arias, art song, spirituals, gospel even. So they'll be out there, but I guess I could sing something. And I'm gonna sing a little bit of, it's a video that I recently put up. It's on YouTube, it's also on my Instagram. I did a video for New Camerata Opera for their virtual gala to support Colin Kaepernick's foundation. And I sang this song, There Are Angels Hovering Round. And then I also sang before that, another spiritual. And, you know, within the African American vernacular, it's particularly at that time of early, you know, they weren't necessarily saying ancestors, but angels did not just refer to like winged beings, did not just refer to Gabriel and the archangels and all of that. They also referred to the ancestors. And so I sang that to honor the ancestors, those whose names we know and those whose names we don't. I recognize that they are watching over us. They have been here with us today. And I'm just so grateful to them. So, and they are also a part. And the thing about the spiritual too is that it's a Christmas spiritual, Advent season. And as we're in this new reconstruction, as we're in this freedom fight, the Advent season represents hope, new birth, new beginning. And so that's what I wanted to bring to it. So I warmed up a little bit. This might get cut out of the YouTube. But all night, all day, the angels keep watching over me, my Lord. All night, the angels keep watching over me, my Lord. There are angels hovering round the King, to tell of the hope and the joy he brings. Listen, children, to the angels sing. There are angels moving round in the New Jerusalem, in the New Jerusalem, in the New Jerusalem. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, Thou hast brought us thus far on the way. Thou hast by thy might lead us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Thank you. Amen and Ashe.
Thank you. Wow. This is a meeting, so if I end the meeting, the chat ends, and I don't want to do that. So.
But just
thank you.
Just housekeeping. Just make sure y'all go back and get that resource. Please engage with myself, with First UU, with NMAAM, with UU Church Huntsville. You know, we're all in this together. We're hearing that a whole lot right now during COVID, right?
Yes.
And we're all in this together. You know, taking stock of what happens here, what happens historically, what's happening now. It all means something. It's all important. Taking stock of your own part in it and what that looks like, because it may not look like what you want it to look like. It's just important to say, you know, what is my role? And your role may be in the street, your role may be in the office, your role may be in the organizations, your role may be in the funding, your role may be in the advocacy, your role may be just sitting, as my mother would say, sitting on the watch wall and just praying. You know, being there, putting forth the energy into the atmosphere that gives us, and those of us who are doing the work, the strength. We don't know where it comes from. That's all that is important, to send out those frequencies. And so that those frequencies also can combat the oppressive. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Until we meet again. I always end choir rehearsal with a tone. I want to invite you, well, let's see. We can invite, I'm gonna throw my moderator a curve. I've allowed you to unmute. We always end our rehearsals with a tone, and if you would like to participate in that, I'm going to invite you. You now have the permission to unmute yourself. You just breathe and make sound together, and it is kind of like an auditory hug. So let's breathe and make a sound. You can breathe again, and we can keep doing it.
Yes.
Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much.